Welcome back, everybody, to Speaking of Meaning. I am Ibrahim, and today I'm joined by Martin Svaneborg. He is an author, singer, actor, and communications expert. Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. Martin, before you introduce yourself, what is one thing you hope our listeners will get from this conversation?
Well, you told me that you wanted to talk about voice as the basis of our conversation. And for me, being trained as a singer and as an actor, voice is not just how you speak. It's not just whatever you're born with. It's something that you train and something that you can make into what you need it to be. So I hope that the listeners will take away a little bit of input about what the voice can become and how the voice can become a tool that can serve them and not just their voice that they have to work with.
Okay. So you are an actor and a singer. Can you tell me, how did you find your voice? Did you find it early on? And when did you realize it was not just a tool, but a part of who you are?
I started singing not early, but in, I think, around 8th, 9th grade of elementary school. I had a very good friend in school who was very good at playing the piano. We became good friends at some point, and we would start to just hang out at his house. His house was on the way to my house, so we would just walk home from school together. And we got into this routine of just ending up at his house, and he would start playing piano from the songbook, and then I would start to sing. And it just became kind of the identity of our friendship, was this music that we shared. Then I got into high school. I also started doing some dancing and some acting, and I figured out that whether you have talent at that age is difficult to say for yourself. But I noticed that there was something there, that when I went on stage, something seemed to make sense. I felt that I could do something, and I really liked it. I liked also the attention that I was getting, mainly from the girls, which when you're a teenager, obviously is a pretty big motivator for anything. If the girls like it, then off you go, we'll do that. So I spent 3 or 4 or 5 years chasing after that. But it wasn't until I really became a professional, after I was trained and stuff like that, that I started to get a sense of the craft that lies behind the voice. Also doing a lot of singing training, having singing teacher and stuff like that. It took a while, it took some years before I got a real understanding of that. This is a craft and this is a tool that I have to work with, and not just something I need to figure out how to work with.
You told me one time you've done some classical singing. What is that, and how has that helped you, how you understand communication and also communicate?
In high school, first year of high school, a week into high school, one of my classmates, a girl called Louisa, came up to me after we had a couple of music classes in high school, and she had noticed that I could sing on some level. I had already noticed that she could sing really well. And then she came up to me and asked, hey, have you ever had singing lessons? And I said, no. And she said, well, my grandmother used to be a professional opera singer. She doesn't really take students anymore, but she lives very close to where you live. She actually didn't tell me that. I figured out. But she said if I'll ask her and see if she can give you a couple of classes. If she can't take you as, ongoing, then at least she can point you towards a good teacher, because you should have some training. And then I went to visit her grandmother, who was at that time in her 70s and was retired. And it turned out that I lived out in a little village, like 15 kilometers from the high school. It turned out her grandmother lived right down the road in the same little village that I lived in, and I didn't know. So I came in to study with this former opera singer, and she took me in, and I was with her for 3 or 4 years. I think I had her as my first teacher, and that was all classical singing, because that was what she was. And that I then went on to musical theater and other things that were much more commercial, because I ended up not being a classical singer. But I was in a preparatory program for the Royal Music Conservatory for a year that I was accepted into as a classical singer. So I did actually train professionally for a couple of years in classical singing. Ended up not going in that direction. But it did teach me something about the voice from the beginning, about what the possibilities of the voice is. When we speak, we just speak with however our voice naturally sounds. But in classical singing, from the beginning, you are aiming for a sound that is different from your own normal sound. It has to be somewhat rooted, but instead of saying da 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 dee da da da, then in classical singing you go da da dee da da da. You're aiming for a different. It's a different genre, and then suddenly I was singing German classical music and going Himmel wunderschönen Monat Mai. And that kind of singing taught me something from the beginning about that your voice doesn't have to sound the way it naturally sounds. If you need it to sound different for some expression purpose, then your voice can do many things. So I think that became the basis of later on when I went into public speaking, that kind of stuff, about how versatile the voice actually is if you get some training and get some understanding to how the voice actually works on a technical level.
Is it all about using the diaphragm to breathe and speak?
I spoke a little bit about this at a masterclass last night, actually, that I gave in Copenhagen about voice. It's very much, I usually teach it fundamentally in the way that if you start by getting some awareness about how much breath travels through your throat when you're creating sound, that awareness, that consciousness in itself is a really, really good place to start, because most people have no self-awareness of what kind of sound actually comes out of their mouth on a auditory level. And breath is a good place to start, because some people have very breathy voices. I always do the analogy to a certain former president called Bill Clinton, who at some point stood up in the White House and said, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman," and trying to make a case for himself. He had a very breathy voice, and he was actually famous for that. He would often lose his voice when he was doing presidential campaigns, because if you speak like that, then there's actually a lot of pressure on your vocal cords if there's too much air passing through. At the same time, if the vocal cords gets too tight and too restricted, if you speak like you've almost sound like you're being strangled, then that's not healthy for the voice either. So both polar opposites of the voice can create both an unhealthy voice that will wear your voice down, but it also eliminates room for actual versatility and variety of your vocal. So somewhere in the middle, from a very breathy voice to a very closed voice, there's a sweet spot in the middle that is simply, there's enough air to create the sound that you want to come out, but you don't waste more air than is what's necessary to get the vocal cords to vibrate and just to create to just create a clear tone. That's usually where I start if I'm teaching people about voice.
So is it basically controlling your breathing as well?
It's
on the way out?
Not just your breathing, but your breath. Because breathing is breathing in and exhaling, but it's how you exhale while creating sound. So you can breathe in and go, but if you breathe out while you want to talk and say, hello, my name is Martin Svaneborg. I have used to be a singer and an actor, and now I'm a little bit of a speaker. And then while the breath travels out of your throat, it creates the sound. It makes the vocal cords vibrate and create the sound. And if you can feel, if you have too much breath, you will run out of breath really quickly. So you can't talk for very long because you can't sustain the note. If you do it from a singing point of view, and you want to make a note and say, if there's too much air, the note is going to be short because I run out of air too quickly. But if I hold back the breath and don't let more through the throat than what I need, then suddenly I can sustain the note for a lot longer. But it also means that I suddenly have room for speaking louder, or I can speak softer, or I can speak with a higher pitch, or I can speak with a lower pitch. And all those tools are suddenly accessible to me because I'm creating fundamentally a note that has potential, or a sound, a speaking sound that has potential. Whereas this sound, I can't take it down either. Because there's nothing there to work with.
And this is very fascinating because I guess also for the listeners, listening to a high-pitched voice, a breathy voice with short breath, it's not comfortable for us as well, right?
No. And it does something to a listener's brain or to an audience brain where you don't necessarily notice it, but you disconnect from the speaker or from the communicator because there's something about that voice that instinctively you feel like, you can feel that it doesn't sound like if you're listening to someone like Bill Clinton and he's trying to talk like that. You have this feeling when you're listening to it like, man, you better, something isn't, I don't feel good here. Like my throat hurts just from listening to you. And if that happens, then you stop really paying attention. You will not connect to that speaker because you're distracted just from feeling sorry for you're going to lose your voice in 5 minutes. I can feel it. And kind of the same thing at the other end of the spectrum. If you're, I made a very interesting analogy yesterday at the masterclass that I was giving when I mentioned when Anthony Hopkins played Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. That first scene when Jodie Foster walks down the hallway in the prison, past the bars, past the cells, and she knows Hannibal Lecter's down at the end. He's going to be there. Don't go too close to the bars. He's going to be there. She turns up, and there's Hannibal Lecter just standing there in the middle of the cell with his prison jumpsuit, nice slick hair, looking very distinguished and very gentlemanly. And then the first thing that he says is just, "Hello, Clarice." And that the voice, the sound that comes out of his voice is not, "Hello, Clarice." And it's also not, hello, Clarice. It's just, hello, Clarice. It's perfectly closed, not too little, not too, it's completely neutral, right in the sweet spot. And for some strange reasons, it's so scary because there's no emotions in it. It's completely neutral. And Anthony Hopkins knew how to do that. He was actually musically very gifted. He's written like symphonies and stuff like that. I don't know how many people know that. And he knew how to do that. But the contrasts can have the same effect, because then someone said, well, can't it sound scary as well if there's too much sound on it? And yes, it can. Because if you're looking at someone that looks like Hannibal Lecter, and then he talks like a child, that would be super creepy as well. So that could disconnect you from your listener as well.
This naturally leads to a question. And the question is, what makes a voice powerful and dynamic?
Yeah. I think I should, I don't think we ever really got to the introduction. We ended up just jumping straight into talking about some stuff, but just to explain what my perspective is, I should probably just clarify my background. Because like I said, I started singing classically with this woman. Then I got into prep for conservatory as a classical singer. But then I moved from there. I cut that because I felt that classical singing was a little bit too, I don't know, it was too stiff for me. I wanted a little bit more show. So I transitioned into musical theater, and I studied at a musical theater school in Sweden called Performing Arts School, where I studied both singing and dancing and acting. And that is my primary training, is musical theater and not classical. And my professional debut was in the leading role of the musical Cabaret, which I actually have 25-year anniversary because it was in January of 2001. I think it was actually yesterday. So I think I had my 25th year anniversary yesterday. Not quite 100% sure. But I was in musical theater for about 15 years. Then I gradually transitioned out of theater. I was a little bit tired of it. I did some TV work for 4 or 5 years. And then I went into public speaking because I was interested in taking my stage background into the real world, meaning corporate business, stuff like that, where you also need to have some communication powers. So to get back to your question about how do you know what makes your voice powerful, I think that boils down to understanding what are you talking about, what is the subject that you are communicating, who are you communicating it to, because a lot of time power is subjective to, first of all, who are you talking to, what are they expecting, and the subject matter. What makes that subject matter powerful, or what makes that subject matter come alive? Because, like I mentioned before with Silence of the Lambs, there's this opening monologue from an old play called War of the Worlds, written by H.G. Wells. It was turned into a movie with Tom Cruise at some point. But back in the 80s, it was done as a play, and Richard Burton narrated the prologue of this pretty scary prologue that basically set up that Earth is about to be invaded by aliens. And that Richard Burton had, his voice was something like, "No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us." And for that, the powerful voice was this very tight, very constricted, very held back. no one would have believed. Like it's a hard kind of sound. It's a little bit like Hannibal Lecter. But for someone who's going to warn the public you're about to be invaded by Martians, that is what has the power. That is what will make them listen. Whereas if you're doing the opening prologue to Beauty and the Beast, you can't go, once upon a time in a faraway land, there lived a prince in a shine, then all the kids are going to go, that will not hold the same power because it's not proportionate to the message. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, yes.
And then you have to switch and you have to be able to understand, for this, I need to go, once upon a time in a faraway land, there lived a prince in a shining castle. That is the power of the voice for that message, for that demographic, for that audience. What is the message? Who is the audience? So I would say with power of the voice, it starts with understanding, well, yeah, in what context?
But let's say everyday life, at work, in a meeting with colleagues, on a date. What is a confident voice, a dynamic voice?
A confident voice is a voice that travels through space. Meaning, if you're in a meeting room at work, you can see I'm sitting here at work. I have a bit of space behind me. So let's say I'm standing here. The rest of my team is back there at the back wall. So if I want to reach them, it's not so much a matter of how do I want my voice to sound, because trying to talk low and take on the Barry Manilow sexy voice, that might not necessarily do it. Some might, for some it might, you never know. But what will always work is trying to focus not on how low or booming or how efficient do I want it to look, but simply, am I creating a sound that will reach them? And again, if I go back to that guy, if I don't have a microphone, that sound doesn't travel through space. It gets to here and then it stops because there's no output. It's that kind of a voice is a sound engineer's worst nightmare. If you ask a sound engineer at a big speaking event or a big corporate event, say, what's your favorite kind of voice? He says, I just want output. And output means that he gets something into his channel that is a clear signal that he can turn a little bit up or he can turn a little bit down, but he doesn't need to do that much with it. Meaning, he doesn't necessarily need to turn up the volume that much just so that the audience can hear the speaker. That's a sound that travels through space on its own. And that's this kind of sound where it's not too hard, but it's also not too much like this. But because both of them is like talking into a fridge, right? You get into the fridge, but then it stays in there. It just dies in there. It becomes this cubicle kind of sound. So in a corporate world at work, that kind of voice will always be interpreted as a confident voice.
Okay.
People will not notice, they will not be aware of why they find it confidence. They will not be aware that it's because it travels, because it has output, because it reaches them. And I don't know how many times I've been in conversations with people one-on-one, and if they're within like a meter of me, like you're sitting face to face, and then suddenly they say, I can feel your voice physically on my chest. Like I can feel the reverberations of your voice on me, like physically, I can feel it going on my chest. because sound waves is a physical thing. It's a physical energy. And if it actually comes out with a proper output, it's like waves in water. Waves in water will continue, a ripple will continue to flow until it is stopped by something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's it called? Aqua waves. They don't, it's eternal energy. A wave doesn't stop until it's blocked by something.
Mm-hmm.
And sound waves function in the same way if they are created with a proper output from the beginning. And that holds such a sense of power and confidence, because physically it reaches people. Instead of that, the audience have to feel like they need to lean forward to listen. Then it's because the audience actually doesn't reach them, or the audio, the sound doesn't reach them.
Yeah. This is very interesting because if you're constantly interrupted at work,
Yeah.
or in meetings, or people don't listen when you're talking, it could be that, of course, people might be rude, but sometimes it can also be because of your voice.
Most often. And if you want a really, really cool trick to speak in a way where you are saying to people, don't interrupt me, without saying the words, don't interrupt me, then speak with a voice where you feel like you're trying to actually hit them physically with your voice. Does that make sense? Like,
can you show us? Or
like
give us an example.
the way I'm speaking now, as opposed to before. I did not have sexual relationship with that woman. I'm speaking to within my own bubble. But as soon as I say, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, then the sound that comes out of my mouth will travel through air, and it will physically hit them. Physically. The reverberations, the resonance of my voice will physically hit them. And it's something that if you don't have the technique to know exactly how to do that, that's fair enough. But the image of knowing that you're actually able to do that in itself can be quite powerful. If you just have that image of, I know that's possible to do, so let me talk as if that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk so that it's going to physically hit you. My voice is going to hit your face. And what that will say is, don't interrupt me. I don't have to say the words. My voice in itself will say, I'm going to keep talking and I need to finish this.
Is it also being loud?
No.
Or just projection?
No.
We're talking about projection here.
No. Volume has nothing to do with it. It's pure output. Because that's exactly what the sound engineer will say right away. If there's output, I don't have to turn the volume up. They will hear it. And that's why that kind of voice is the sound engineer's worst nightmare, because he knows he has to keep turning the volume up, and it's going to keep sounding like crap. Because even though he turns up the volume, the output is still not there. So the sound is still has no effect.
Okay. And so what can I do now? Is it breathe in, hold it, and then speak and hit them with my voice?
Speak as if you are singing, as if there's a tonality to your voice. So if I'm saying, let's go back to Beauty and the Beast. If I say that first couple of lines from Beauty and the Beast as if I'm just talking and don't care. I say, once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a prince in a shining castle. Though he had everything his heart desired, the prince was spoiled, selfish, and unkind. Sounds really engaging, right? And it doesn't, because I'm speaking as if I'm only speaking. But if I say, Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a prince in a shining castle. Though he had everything his heart desired, he was spoiled, selfish, and unkind. Can you hear the singing in it?
Yeah.
That suddenly there's a tonality to it. I'm saying everything as if, first of all, I'm up prioritizing the vowels of each word. So you don't say, once upon a time in a faraway land with all the consonants, but you're going, once upon a time in a faraway land. You're hitting all the vowels instead, because the vowels can make music. They can make tones. Consonants are just
Land.
sounds and mostly lips and breath. So if you try to talk in a way where there could be a melody running through the whole sentence, then suddenly you get this sense of, well, then you can start to do all kinds of things with your voice within one sentence. So thinking about tonality, or you could also say melody, if that word resonates better with you, other than just speaking, because that tends to be like a monotonous level kind of venture.
That's the worst of all.
Yeah,
It's like being dead.
yeah.
A monotonous voice.
Yes, exactly.
Speaking in melody, having projection, and so forth, we can do that if we are confident, if we're calm, if we are speaking about a subject we have knowledge in. But once we are nervous, afraid, scared, stressed out, at least, when it comes to me, I feel that there's something in my chest, something here that is pushing it down, and it affects my voice. Is there a way that I can manage that? And why does it happen in the beginning? And what can I do about it?
Yeah. That sensation, the fear or the anxiety, comes from brain interpretation of a physical sensation. Whenever we are about to go into unknown territory, we are programmed through thousands and millions of years of evolution to go into unknown territory with the utmost amount of caution. Because we must assume that behind the unknown corner there is danger that could kill us. There are not that many dangers to our lives anymore, but a couple of thousand years ago, they were literally around every goddamn corner. So speaking in public, why people get so scared of it, is because it feels unnatural, it feels unknown, it feels like something I haven't done before. And then some old part of our brain, the reptilian tiny little fucker brain deep inside the head, says, we haven't done this before, then it's probably going to be dangerous, and then it's probably going to kill us. So let's be really, really afraid of that. And that's just the brain making up worst case scenarios of what could happen when we're going to do our presentation. But it's completely irrational, especially in 2026, because we're probably not going to die. They're probably not going to jump a tiger from behind the manager's seat and attack us. So we're probably going to be fine, but we're just programmed to always assume worst case scenarios. And that's what we do if we don't prepare a different scenario in our head beforehand. So there's two parts to managing that fear. One is that physical sensation when you start to get nervous and you feel everything is tightening up, you get that your stomach starts to turn, you feel the butterflies, you feel a lump in your throat, the jitters, your hands start to go like that. That's just a physical sensation that is a physical response to the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
What people most often don't notice it is that if we feel really, really nervous, which we experience as something negative, or if we are super excited about something is going to happen that we feel is something positive. If a kid is like the day before Christmas or going to Tivoli tomorrow, he's super excited and the whole body is goes, ugh. Those two states, mental states, the physical thing that happens in the body is the same thing. But we decide to interpret it as either nervousness or excitement. The nervousness we deem bad, that will kill us, or close to. Excited, that's good, because that means we know we're going to have fun. But we only interpret it positive if we know what's going to happen, if we know what it is. It's going to be Christmas tomorrow. We know it's good. We know it's presents. And then we allow ourselves to assume the positive outcome. If it's an unknown outcome, we automatically assume it to be negative. But that's our choice. And we don't know that we most oftentimes actually make a choice of interpreting that feeling as bad. The point is that that physical sensation has to be there. Because if I go on stage and I don't feel like, then it means I don't care. And I'm not good on a stage if I don't care about what I'm doing there. So for me to be at my best, I need this to be going on, because it means that I know my system is switched on. So that's the first thing, is knowing that that physical sensation actually should be there. That's fine that. Then it's just a matter of learning how to manage and prepare yourself for that and say, okay, when that comes, that's fine. My job is to learn how to work with that physical sensation and use that to my advantage instead of trying to eliminate it, because I can't. And it will just scare me that much more when I get closer to the presentation and I'm still going like that and I start to freak out because I can't make it go away. So one thing is understand that that's fine, that has to be there. It can actually just make you better. And then the other is mental preparation. Before you go in, then like the day before or even a week before, start imagining the positive outcome of what you're going to do. So imagine yourself being in that boardroom, making the presentation, and imagine yourself it going well. And everyone cheering and everyone saying, oh, that was amazing. I really like that bit. And if you keep reimagining the positive outcome, that will create like a mental highway in the brain, so that when the body then starts doing that, then the brain doesn't freak out because it's prepared for, yeah, but it's going to be fine because we've prepared fine. So now we're going to use this for the positive outcome.
Mm.
Does
So
that make sense?
basically, yeah. So what I get from this, or what I hear you say, is number one, it's natural.
Mm-hmm.
We should be a little bit nervous. And number two, use visualization.
Yeah. The point is the physical state should be there. The question is, what do you call it when you feel it coming? Do you call it being nervous? Because if you call it being nervous, then you are choosing to interpret it in a negative way. And your brain will then pick up on that and say, then we're going to die. So call it excited instead.
Mm.
And insist on calling it excited, and insist on calling it something that I'm going to use positively for my advantage.
Mm-hmm.
It's also very much about labeling, about what you choose to call it and what words you ascribe to it. So don't ascribe it something that you would consider being a bad thing.
Mm. So basically, use it to your advantage.
Yes.
This is very interesting. One thing that I noticed sometimes when I notice that people are trying to be confident, they tend to use body language, uh, take up more space, look up, their chest out there, and so forth. But what I always see or hear is usually the voice revealing the emotions that
Mm,
they're
mm,
trying to fake
mm.
or hide from other people. Is there any way we can control how, you know, is there any way, I guess, we can control how our voice are being perceived? Can we control our voice even when we are nervous?
If you are very experienced at working with your voice on a technical level, then yes, you can control it to some extent. But it doesn't really come down to controlling your voice. It comes down to controlling the entire system. Like when I go on stage, it's not about that I'm able to separate my voice from the rest of my body being like that. It's about being able to control the whole system and knowing how this works and knowing how this works and knowing how that works. And then through experience, just having done it so many times that I know what it is, so it doesn't bother me. I work with it. There was a American comedian called Bill Hader. He was on Saturday Night Live for years, and he talked about that he would suffer so much with stage fright when he was on Saturday Night Live because it was a live show. So when they performed live on air, he was so afraid of fucking up, and he would get so scared. He ended up actually quitting the show because of stage fright. And then he spoke to the very legendary American film star Jeff Bridges at some point. And he asked him to Jeff Bridges and said, "What do you do? Do you ever get like this? Because I'm really struggling with." And Jeff Bridges said, "Yeah, don't worry about it, man. It's like, yeah, you gotta get the shakes. You gotta feel like that. But you know what? You put your arm around that sucker. It's your buddy, man." Meaning that it's a friend of yours, and it's you can almost see it like a person that you have to dance with. Like it's something that you have to learn to work with, because it has to be there and it should be there. If it's not there, then either you absolutely don't care or you're psychopathic. Neither of those two are not good in in the context of a presentation. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. You can learn to manage it, but I would suggest any day of the week, spend more time on trying to train to familiarize yourself with working with that sense of the shakes. You notice I don't call it the nerves. I call it the shakes. It's my own word for it. Because when I feel them coming, then I'm like, there we are. Okay, now we're ready. Now it's time to go on stage. I was getting a little word like, where were you, man? So focus on working with it in a positive way, instead of trying to feel, how do I manage it? Because that sounds like you need to sort of keep it under wraps or keep it controlled in some way. Don't control it. Just let it out and then work with it.
So basically, the mind is connected to the voice.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Very much.
So, Martin, we've talked about the voice, how the mind is connected to the voice and different kind of sounds and projection and so forth. Do you have any exercises that I can do, that the listeners can do to create a more deeper dynamic voice?
Hmm. um,
Is that part of the answer?
yeah. If I have to go on stage and do something that's a little bit more than just talking for 5 minutes, then I have a 30-minute vocal warm-up program that I have on my phone, with all different kind of exercises where I actually warm up my voice so that it functions at its best, whether I have to sing or whether I just have to speak. I warm up my voice to get it functionally optimal. And one exercise is, if you take the word sing, S-I-N-G, and you say sing, then the
Sing.
last two letters, N-G, that part of the word sing, N-G, So if you say sing, and then extend the N-G sound at the end, that is created by the tongue going up into the top of the mouth. It pulls the back of the tongue out of the throat, which creates room in the throat for the vocal cords to vibrate freely, because something that often happens with, now I'm going to turn my head sideways a little bit, is that if people talk like this, then they're pushing the back of their tongue into the throat, and it pushes down onto the vocal cords.
Oh.
And then the vocal cords can't vibrate freely because there's a tongue sort of pushing down.
Oh, okay.
So if you get with the NG sound, the back of the tongue is pulled up into the top of the mouth cave, and that creates a very free and very healthy sound around the vocal cords.
Okay.
So I have an opening exercise where I basically just do that NG sound, and then I do these glides where I go just on that NG sound with the back of the tongue up, and then I glide up and down. It gets the vocal cords going, but it also sort of creates some elasticity in the range of the voice, so that you get some pitch to work with, so that you don't have just but and
is that with the NG word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sing. So if
Sing.
Yeah.
Sing.
Exactly. And you want the teeth to be open, you want the lips to be open, because it's created purely it's created purely with the tongue. Yeah. So I basically just do that, and then at some point I do some contrast exercises with the breath to get the vocal cords to close properly, so that I don't end up having that one. I also don't end up having that one. So when I've done the sing for a little while, then I add the breath and go and do it with a lot of air, and then and then I go on to an A and say with a lot of air, with no air, and I just flip back and forth between the contrasts, because doing the contrasts make my brain actually notice that there's a difference. The brain is really good at going on autopilot and not noticing what the hell the body is doing, and this is part of the body, the voice. It's all muscle. From the jaw and down is body. So if we only just try to do the good sound and go and we keep doing the same thing, the brain stops paying attention, and then we might actually not do the good sound, but the brain is not noticing it because we're not doing alternatives to it. So the more you can practice contrast, the more you become aware of where might your good sound be in the middle. So that's basically my warm-up, is first some NG. In the beginning, I also always take it quite low and just go Especially if you wake up on a Sunday morning and the voice is just gone. It's there's just nothing there. Then you have to start low and just go.
Mm. Are you breathing out, Martin, when you're doing this exercise?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So breathe in and then I breathe out with the
Ah.
breathe in
Ah.
and breathe out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start to go with air, without air, with air. Yeah, now it's starting to find itself.
Mm-hmm. And so these exercises, do they create a deeper voice?
They will down the line, because they will basically just make the vocal cords connect healthily, but they will also find what is the natural sweet spot of your pitch in your like, where do you naturally talk up here, or do you naturally talk down here? Getting the vocal cords to just function at its best will also find where your pitch is supposed to be, where your pitch is completely relaxed and unrestricted. Usually, if I speak, I know I have a pitch that is somewhere around where I'm speaking now. If I go a little bit up and try to speak up here, I can feel something in my throat. Just it's little details, but I can feel something is happening. Something is contracting. Something is doing an effort to take me up there, because it's not my natural place to be. And the same place, if I go down here, I can feel that I'm doing something actively to get that speaking voice that low, because I'm not naturally that low, and I can feel something is happening. But if I'm right in the sweet spot, I can also physically feel my whole neck just going and just relaxing. And it's just vocal cords that is doing the work and nothing else.
This is very fascinating. The voice is part of the body.
Oh, it is. The voice is a muscle.
The voice is a muscle.
Yeah. And it can be trained just like any other muscle in the body.
Yeah. Martin, if we move on now and talk about your, because you're a wonderful public speaker.
Thank you.
You gave a TEDx presentation titled Public Speaking is a Hoax, the Avatar of Great Speakers. What was the core message behind that speech?
It's a catchy title, isn't it? Especially in this day and age where certain people have liked to throw the hoax word around anything. The core message of that TEDx talk was the primary thing that I have taken out of 25 years in the entertainment industry and being on theater stages is that, and also into real life, into corporate, whether it's at work, whether it's job interviews, whatever. If you're on a stage, meaning, doesn't have to be a theater stage, I use the stage as a metaphor, for every time you get in front of more than 2 people with something that you have prepared for more than 2 minutes, could be a boardroom, could be you're a university professor teaching in the auditorium. You're on a stage in front of a crowd, you've prepared what you're going to do. As soon as you're doing that, you are performing. And when you are performing, you're not supposed to be yourself. And I don't know how many times I've heard people say to me that, no, my friend just told me to be myself when I'm going to go for that job interview, or when I'm going to do the presentation at work. Just be yourself. But that's bullshit. Because as soon as you are performing, and as soon as you're doing something that is prepared, whether you are yourself does not matter. It's completely irrelevant. And whether you're authentic, which is another proper buzzword, in the last
Mm.
couple of years. Authenticity is like the new black. Whether you're authentic doesn't matter because the audience don't know who you are. So they don't care about whether you're authentic. They care about whether they perceive you as authentic and whether they perceive you as someone they can relate to and someone they can resonate you, someone they can connect with. So when you're on stage, all that matters is, can you make the audience believe you? And who you then really are doesn't matter. So the core message of that TED Talk was, when you go on stage, don't be yourself because it won't help you. Don't try to be authentic because it won't help you. What will help you is to create an avatar that is based on who you are. Just like that movie with the blue avatars. And I like that as a reference for this, because those blue avatars, they were all avatar versions of real people. But the avatar versions were bigger, they were stronger than the real people. They were very much like movie stage entertainment versions of the real people. They were the ones that you would want to see on stage because they were quite entertaining and you would want to listen to them. The real people that were in those containers while the blue selves were running around, you weren't that interested. And me as a private person, I'm highly introverted. I love, you see, I have my coffee cup. I don't go anywhere without it. I preferably just want to sit at home, write my books, be in my chair and read some novels and write my coffee. I don't like socializing. I don't like being around people or around crowds. I've learned to do so from a stage. I've learned to be professionally extrovert. But if I was myself on a stage, the audience would be bored and ask for the money back because you don't want who I really am on the stage, because that person is not interesting on a stage. He is thoroughly a waste of your time. But this guy, the public speaking avatar version of Martin Svaneborg, he's really good on a stage. He's entertaining. He knows how to talk in a way that can capture the audience because he's been trained to do exactly that. And that avatar version of the real guy has been trained skillfully and specifically for that purpose of being on a stage and being perceived as authentic in that format in front of a crowd.
Okay, this is very interesting. We could have
I know.
an entire
know.
Podcast episode about this.
Yeah, it's a concept that I've actually been developing over 5 or 6 years. The avatar concept, because no one talks about it, especially in public speaking. No one will even acknowledge it. And people think that it's like it's what actors doing. They pretend to be someone else. So I get it. It's a big concept, and Germany, the TEDx talk was the first time I mentioned it.
Are you talking about being somebody completely a different person? Are we talking about taking a part of yourself that is interesting and expanding on that and leaving out the part of you that is not interesting to the audience?
That's a very good question and very essential. Crucial, actually, because to me personally, I have 25 years of acting background. So for me to get into the mindset of having an alter ego almost is very natural to me because I've played other people than myself all my life. So that notion to me is not strange. And to me, when I go on stage, yes, I almost feel like a completely different person. I compare myself to Jekyll and Hyde. Like when I go on stage, it's a complete personality switch. But I know that other person is rooted in me. It's based on who I really am. And there's nothing in that person that doesn't live somewhere in the real me. Because if I created a completely different persona that really had nothing to do with me, then that persona would not be credible. Because people are clever enough that if they're sitting and they're watching someone on stage and it just feels like he's just acting, like that's not him. Like, I've met him, I've seen him in an interview. That's not who he is at all. People will see through that. And then again, you have the same disconnect as you have with the weird voices that we talked about earlier. If you're trying to develop an avatar doesn't have to be that different from you. It's more a matter of, first of all, my point was, it can help you tremendously with stage fright, because a lot of what frightens people when they go on stage is that they feel exactly that thing, that it's me. Everyone says, just be yourself. But if I take me, my private me on stage, and it doesn't work, then it's also the private me that is going to get criticized. It's me who's failing. It's me who's being rejected. But if I could go up there with a different mindset and I say, I don't have to be myself, then it can take some pressure off of myself. It can be oddly liberating, because then I can allow myself to go up there and say, well, I'm just going to be that other version of myself that is better at that job than I really am as a private person. And how different that personality have to be, that avatar have to be from who I really am. Of course, that can differ. There are few people, like these highly extroverted, rare people that are naturally talkative, naturally flamboyant, naturally dramatic, and are the exact same way on a stage or as they are in a one-on-one conversation. Maybe they don't have to create an avatar. Maybe they have to, on the opposite end of the scale, maybe tone their private way down a little bit, so that, because I find those people super tiring. I can't talk to those kind of people for more than two minutes. Then I go, dude, you need to calm down. You're stressing me out. But so an avatar is just a way to allow yourself a mindset. Also, if you're training this from a low level, if you've never really been on stage, you've never really done public speaking, and you're just starting out, then it's also a matter of just a baseline mindset. When you go up the first time, are you going up there saying, I want to be myself? But if you go up there and you say, I'm going to go up there and I'm not going to be myself, and then see what happens, then often something will emerge. You will discover something. And then, like you say, then you can start to play around with, are there sides of myself? Like, for instance, with me, I've been called arrogant since I was in high school. And for years, I thought that as a negative thing that I should try to eliminate. And then I argued that, no, I'm not arrogant, I'm confident. It's a different thing. Until recently, a couple of years ago, I realized I can actually use arrogant positively as a speaker. Privately, it's not that charming, but on stage, it can be quite entertaining. And it can even be quite funny. So as a speaker, I can actually use arrogance. So my public speaking avatar, he's very arrogant and deliberately arrogant. And I play with it and I do jokes about it and I enhance it because I've played with it and I've discovered that actually had some potential.
It has some potential. Do you think it's because there is some truth in that as well?
Absolutely. Because if we take all these basic things, what can you do with your voice? What can you do with an avatar? In my opinion, the most powerful thing above all on a stage as a speaker is daring to be honest about yourself. If you can be honest with your audience and say, I know I'm arrogant, what are we going to do? Um, and if you're willing to ridicule yourself and take yourself down, then there's nothing that is more connecting and creates more empathy than if an audience see, well, if he's willing to call out his own bullshit, then fair play. That guy I will listen to. Because if he was trying to convince me that all of that bullshit was fine, but he's admitting that, yeah, it's not all that charming and not in all contexts. But there's something about a humility about your bad sides. If you're using your bad sides or your weakness, I had this very catchy phrase in my TEDx talk where I said, turn your flaws into fortitude, which is what I'm doing with arrogance. That we have a lot of parts of our personality that we consider as flaws. And then we try to hide them because we think that, well, then the world doesn't want to see them and they're no good for me. In certain situations, they might be. In certain contexts, those flaws could be turned into fortitude, and a stage is one of them. Because on a stage, anything goes. There is nothing that you cannot be on a stage. It's just a matter of, can you make them buy it? If you can...
And still be honest.
And still be honest. Can you be honest about it? And can you make them buy into that? That's okay, that this is what you're projecting. If you can make them go along with it, then nothing is forbidden.
Isn't that authenticity, though? Being honest?
I would say it's perceived authenticity. Because I might know that when I go on stage, I'm not the real me. So I don't feel I'm authentic because I'm not showing them who I really am. But I know that I'm showing them someone that I want them to perceive as the real me. So to them, I want them to perceive me as authentic. But to me, I don't feel like I'm authentic because I know that what I'm doing up there is a little bit of an act. And acting is not bad. It's not wrong, and it's not cheating or being fake. It's accepting that when you're on stage, it's a different game. And stage is not, I said that in my TEDx talk as well, the stage is not a real representation of life. It's a rehearsed, closed, magical world where anything goes, as long as you can make the audience believe in whatever you're doing. And if they perceive it as authenticity, it's authenticity to them. But it doesn't mean that it is to me. Because I might know what I'm doing behind the scenes. I might know what strings I'm pulling, that I feel a little bit like a puppet master. And I'm sometimes pulling the audience around, and I know how I'm pulling them around, and they don't.
Just to make sure I understand this one, Martin, you're not talking about intentions here, having bad intentions. You're talking about creating an avatar that is going to be interesting, that brings out the best in you on the stage. And in that way, you can reach your goal, help the audience reach their goals as well.
Yeah. It's about acknowledging that in 9 times out of 10, your own private self is not enough on a stage. That private person is not interesting enough on a stage. And to become someone who can really own the stage, you need to allow yourself to go beyond who you really are and allow yourself to create something, a version of yourself that is better at being on a stage in front of an audience and is better at being perceived as authentic as your own private self really is, who can become bigger and, who can entertain and who can be funny and who can be empathetic and mesmerizing.
All right, great. Martin, I have one last question for you. And that question, if you could only give one advice, only one piece of advice the books you've written, the books you've read, all your talks, your knowledge, you could only give one advice for a better, more meaningful life, what would it be?
Take time to enjoy your coffee.
So basically, live in the moment.
Don't get caught up in all the big things that you think will make your life vastly better. Because a lot of times it's the small things that you really cherish that you're often willing to give up in the pursuit of the bigger projects that will aim for the bigger stars. But for me, it's the small moments. It's me sitting in my chair with my coffee that always anchors me back to my sense of happiness and my sense of fulfillment, regardless of what I otherwise get to do of bigger things that might seem really incredible and fulfilling and meaningful. But without that anchor in the small things of the everyday life, then I get lost in the big stuff.
So basically, be thankful, enjoy, be grateful to the small things in life that you have.
Yeah. Enjoy the coffee, smell the flowers.
Martin, thank you so much for joining Speaking of Meaning. And what I take away from this conversation is that your voice is part of the body and it can actually be trained. This has been valuable. Thank you so much, Martin.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.